I'm Mark Bell, and I'm on my 10-minute walk, and I got my boy, Josh Settlegate, here with me today. Mr. Josh Settlegate, I wanted to start out by asking you, we're going to talk a lot about discipline today, and daily discipline, something Josh is very well connected to. But my first question is, did you know that Benedict Magnusson, who still holds the all-time deadlift record in powerlifting with 1,015 deadlift, done without any straps, are you aware that he did at one time, and I wish we were sitting down because I don't want you to faint, he one time did something that no one else has ever done. He's done an 11-minute walk.
What?
So he had world record holder, all-time world record holder in a deadlift, and now he's done, we do 10-minute walks all the time.
Yeah.
Benedict got himself in good enough shape, and he somehow was able to do an 11-minute walk.
How does he have like the conditioning capacity to do something just that extreme? I mean, like that's beyond me.
I think it must be a genetic component or maybe a mindset type thing that allowed him to just push further above and beyond what most people can do. Anyway, we're going to talk about discipline today, and my boy Josh has something that he calls daily discipline. Why don't you inform people a little bit about what's daily discipline's all about?
Yeah,
or how it came to be.
Well, it started because I put something on my Snapchat when I was in college in 2017, and I originally thought of it like, daily discipline is kind of catchy, and I just threw it up there like, hey, like your daily discipline challenge for today is to not complain for 24 hours. And I used it as a hashtag. And it kind of took off from there. And as I started learning more about other people who were disciplined, other people that I had looked up to, people like Mark. I've been following Mark since I was in high school. I was in math class. Hey now. I was in math class, and you prop your book up on the desk, and you're like, yeah, I'm reading my book, but really I was watching Mark do these crazy good mornings with a bar that wasn't straight and a bunch of chains on it. And I was just like, I don't need math. I'll just do whatever this guy's doing. He seems fine. So it started out as like a catchy hashtag, but then over time I realized that there were a lot of moments in my life when I was wrestling, a lot of moments in my life where I was getting through school and other hard things that have happened, and I realized that discipline was one of the root causes of why I was able to get through a lot of those things and be successful in those things. And when I wrestled, I came into the sport pretty late, and I started wrestling in 8th grade. Most guys that are at the highest level of wrestling start when they're 5, 6, maybe 7. So coming in as a teenager, it's like, it's great that you're in the sport, but no one was really saying that I would, do anything in the sport. I didn't do anything in the sport, but we'll make that clear. But I realized that your ability to improve as a wrestler was directly tied to your own level of discipline. Some kids have a natural talent to just move their body, but you really can't get around putting in the work with your teammates. You really can't get around lifting when you need to. And so I recognized that I was kind of coming into the sport at a deficit, and realized if I could just be disciplined in how I trained and how I ate and how I slept and how I practiced, I would be able to kind of catch up and shorten that distance between me and some of the other more experienced guys on the team. Once I kind of had developed that level of consistency and that level of drive and motivation to be the best I could and to kind of compete with them, I took that same approach anytime anything hard in life came up, whether that was like classes, family or relational issues, financial issues, really anything that was going on. And I realized that if I can just control my own level of discipline in whatever I'm doing, whether that's lifting currently or doing jiu-jitsu now, I would be able to kind of rest my head at night and be content in a weird way, because you're never, Mark, I'm sure you're kind of never really fully content or never fully satisfied. But you can at least rest assured knowing that okay, I control the things that I can control, so whatever outcome happens, I know it's just things that happen outside of my control, because I was disciplined to a T. I ate everything I needed to eat. I lifted everything I needed to lift. I trained on all the days I needed to train. I did all the rounds, and I even did extra. So if I lose this match or I lose this tournament, I really can't beat myself up that bad about it, because it's just out of my control.
When it comes to wrestling, what happens when you're exhausted? What happens when you're really, really when you're really tired and you're not conditioned the way that you need to be?
So wrestling's extremely interesting because it's only a 6-minute match. In 6 minutes, we go on 10-minute walks all the time. Benedict Magnuson did an 11-minute walk, so like he's in great shape. So you wouldn't think that 6 minutes would be the longest 6 minutes of your entire life. And just the nature of the sport, the constant pushing and pulling, it's a very anaerobic sport that is also kind of aerobic at the same time because it goes longer than 30 seconds. And so what happens is your blood lactate threshold really gets tested, and at that point where you start to redline and you really start to feel fatigued, you'll see, and basically every wrestler, they'll do two different things. Some people kind of take their foot off the gas, they kind of cower, and they just start losing in their own mind. They start thinking like, there's no way, I'm down by 1 point, all I need is one more takedown to win. I'm so tired, I don't think I can do it. And you see it in their face. They're like, the muscles of their face relax and change, and they look defeated. They look like they lost when they still have 90 seconds to go. The other thing you'll see is some people do get that feeling and they'll push into it harder. They'll lean into it harder. Mark, you talk a lot about leaning into adversity and leaning into things that challenge you and that are difficult. And you'll see that happen. And all of a sudden, it looks like they got a boost of energy or a second win. When if you're a wrestler, you know that like there's no more energy left. It's like an intangible source of energy that you get when you start to believe like, I can get this last takedown and win. And that's a lot of times what happens in the sport, is this mental battle that goes alongside the physical battle.
And if you're too fatigued, like, it doesn't matter how skillful you are, it doesn't matter how strong you are. You might be a wrestler that can squat 500 pounds, might be able to bench 300 pounds, and you might be quite a bit stronger than all the people in your weight class. But if you don't have the ability, if you can't breathe during the event, you're not going to be able to even show what you can actually do. And life is that way. When fatigue makes cowards of us all, and fatigue can change your mindset. You can be as tough as you want to be, but if you're put into a situation that you're not prepared for, you're no longer tough anymore. That's why I often say I kind of think that mental toughness in some degree is maybe just misunderstood, because it's not necessarily mental toughness, it's being prepared. Because you could say, yeah, shit, Mark's pretty tough, but you and I both know I don't have any wrestling experience, so if you and I wrestle around for a little bit, you'll just get me tired. I will not look very tough at all. I'll look like a sack of crap is what I'll look like. And so I think that by attaching yourself to these daily disciplines, you can be prepared for the things that you're about to do in life. And when you're prepared, you won't be fatigued or as fatigued, and you can in a sense always look like you're well prepared and well conditioned for whatever it is you're about to do.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time that the two keys to daily discipline are preparation and consistency. You can't be consistent if you don't prepare anything. Like you have to, it's a classic saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So having the preparation, Mark, you've talked about this a lot of times. People struggle with being consistent and being disciplined in training. So you tell them, well, set your clothes out the night before, or better yet, go to sleep wearing your gym clothes. Just don't put your shoes on. So when you wake up, the only thing you have to do is put your shoes on, grab your keys, and you're already out the door. There were a lot of times in college, and this is like some of the most like memorable moments of my life. I was at SuperTraining, I thought by myself, and then one day I was taking a pre-squat dump, and I hear, hello? And I probably pooped a little bit more because I was so scared, but it was awesome to see you, Mark, take that same level of preparation and consistency and come to the gym super early. I learned a lot from you at those workouts, and you helped me in so many different areas, outside of physical training and lifting and things. But Mark said, the only way he could do that is by being prepared and being consistent, making sure, you're prepared to go to bed on time. I think a lot of times people think that, how do you get up early?
Yeah, waking up at 4 is not hard if you slept for 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Preparation and consistency is huge, and a lot of times when people fall off their daily discipline, they feel like, oh, like they kind of get into a panic, like I don't know what to do. I was doing so good, and you've said it before. They get a case of the fuckets in one direction or the other. And sometimes instead of just getting a case of those fuckets in the wrong direction, just find a simple way to get prepared again so you can get back to being consistent. It's much simpler than oftentimes we make it out to be.
Some preparation will make the consistency a whole lot easier. Being attached to some sort of regimented meal plan of some sort, whether it's that you purchase pre-cooked meals from a meal prep company, or you just what things you can pick up from your local gas station that are already you grab a cheese stick and some pepperoni if it's in accordance to your diet, or you just prep your own stuff your own way. We had one guy on the podcast recently who talked about throwing some chicken in his oven when he gets home from his workout, or when he works out in his house. That helps him with more convenience because he doesn't have to drive to the gym and spend all that time doing that. So there's another example of having some preparation. He knows that he's just going to train right in his own home, but right when he's done with training, he pops some chicken or whatever the type of meat is that he wants. He puts it in his oven. It's in there for about 20 minutes, and right when he's done, he puts rice in the rice cooker, and right when he's done with that, or right as he's cooking that, he hits the shower. Pops out of the shower, and his meal prep literally took no time. Now it makes the whole day of eating so much easier because he already has food that's prepped. I think you do similar stuff with your meal prep too, right?
Yep. Yeah, I have a system in place that I've been following. A system.
Got a system going on.
It's a system that I have that I've been following for years, and it works because it's realistic, it's repeatable, it helps me get closer to the goals that I have, but it isn't something that's going to be so extreme that it's going to be hard to maintain for long periods of time. And I think a lot of times when people set a certain goal or they have something that they want to achieve, they quickly, and maybe it's just a case of shiny object syndrome, but they oftentimes look at the most complicated, extreme thing possible, and they're like, well, I'm going to do this to reach my goal. It's like, well, that's great if you're only going to do it for 2 weeks or maybe even a month. But a lot of times these goals take multiple months, sometimes multiple years. And if you're not doing something that you can be disciplined with, where you can constantly prepare and be consistent with, a lot of times you unfortunately can set yourself up for failure and future disappointment. So maybe it would be a little bit of a better idea to look at something that's okay. It's not as extreme, but it's much more maintainable. It's much more realistic. It's much more repeatable. It's something that I can do on a daily basis, kind of incorporate it into my daily minimums so that each and every single day I keep putting up points on the scoreboard, even if it's just 1 or 2 points. 1 or 2 points over the course of the whole year is a lot of points stacked up, as opposed to 1 week where you get 5 days of 10 points.
What is do you get really frustrated with yourself if you're not staying connected to some of these disciplines, and how do you recalibrate from there? Because I know when you're like a self-actualizer, when you're someone that's used to putting up these points on the scoreboard, on days where you shift away from that for a bit, do you get really disappointed in yourself?
It's funny that you bring that up, because I used to be like that, and especially when I wrestled. Because when I wrestled, it was at an interesting time in my life where I put my entire identity into wrestling, and in my whole identity was just wrapped up in my success as a wrestler. So if I lost in a wrestling match or didn't win a tournament, I felt like a loser. Yeah. And so I would tie myself so closely to being disciplined so that I can win, instead of just being disciplined so that I can be a better person. And so when I was so disciplined and then I end up losing, it felt like all that discipline was just a wash, and I started binge eating and just going completely in the wrong direction. Kind of find myself like, okay, like you got to get back to it and get right back on track, and I'd be good as long as I was winning. But then as soon as you lose, you kind of like, I'm sure you've seen this, someone bombs out of meat. Yep. They don't necessarily need to train or change their entire training program and just do something different.
Small tweaks somewhere.
Exactly. And I think that's something that it took me a long time to figure out, to realize, like, look, it's not the end of the world if I'm not disciplined in this one instance, but I need to have a system in place to help me get right back on track. And a lot of times when I do fall off my discipline, because I'm human, we all do it, the first thing I do is I just take accountability and take ownership over the fact that I didn't have discipline in this situation or in this area. I figure out a way to take immediate action, one small task that I can do that will help me get disciplined right away. Mark, this is something that I've said for years, and I first heard you say it. It only takes one meal to fall off your diet.
Right.
But it only takes one good meal to get back on.
Right.
So just find one small action that you can take, an immediate action, not something you're gonna do tomorrow, like, well, I didn't train today, so I'll just train tomorrow. Figure out a way to get in some sort of training today. You can walk, you can do burpees. Burpees suck, so pick your poison on that one, and then pick another task that you can do the next day, and then another task that you can do the next day. That way you have 3 days worth of tasks to keep you on point. And if you keep repeating that process, you'll always be 3 days ahead. You'll be prepared for the next 3 days. You'll be able to be consistent for the next 3 days. You can keep that pace up and start snowballing your daily disciplines together.
Yeah, and I think motivation is like subjective, right? So if you do lose at something, or you have a little extra stress, and you're gonna overeat or indulge in or partake in eating some different foods, you can just simply go back to factual stuff and remove yourself away from your feelings and say, hey, you know what, I just broke up with my girlfriend. Maybe you just say, like, F weighing your food for a while, or F getting on the scale for a while. Maybe you get rid of a couple of those things because you know that your response to it, right? But you can also just get back to discipline and get back to facts and say, well, because this happened, I'm gonna go into a little bit of a caloric surplus. I'm gonna bulk a little bit. I'm gonna lift a little heavier. I'm gonna do a couple of these things differently for a little while. Give yourself, throw yourself that underhand pitch so that what you're about to do is easy enough. The greatest way to continually stay motivated, and the best thing people can do with motivation is to try to just eliminate it as a factor. You can eliminate motivation. You don't want to eliminate it forever. If a good song hits, or like you get fired up, like those things are still great. The emotions of what motivation can do for you can be really powerful. But a really great thing to do is stay connected to your daily disciplines, because the daily disciplines are things that you probably laid out for yourself at some point, and you said, look, if I do these 3 things every day, it's going to help me get over here to this goal. And usually they're kind of like, maybe you don't know 100% sure that those things are going to lead to that, but they're your best guesses at that time, right? And maybe you have to calibrate and reevaluate those 3 things that you're doing, and maybe they have to be switched, and maybe you have to go into it more intensely or something than you anticipated, right? There's always going to be some small tweaks to it, but it's stuff that you agreed that this is going to be my best path. If I'm going to lose weight and be in great shape, I need to meal prep, because if I don't meal prep, I'm going to be hungry. When I'm hungry, I'm going to make poor decisions. Remember, fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Yep.
When you're really hungry, you're kind of almost in a fatigue state. You're grumpy. You're not going to make the best decisions. You're not going to make the best decisions when you're trying to fight for survival, or when you're tired. Like, it's just not going to work out well. So if you have that prepped meal that's already sitting there, you eliminate the motivation of it. It's not really motivational anymore. You're just like, well, do I stop at McDonald's and get a cheeseburger, French fries, and a shake? Nah, you know what? You should just drive home, because you have all that food in your freezer.
Yeah.
Or you have the food at work already, or wherever it is. So I love that Josh talks a lot about this, the daily disciplines. I think they can be things that can be a huge factor for you. What are like 1 or 2 things that you implemented that really kind of sprungboard some of this daily discipline that these people can kind of take home with them and maybe start to implement right away?
Yeah, the first thing was getting up early. I realized that as a wrestling athlete in high school, I didn't have time to lift after practice, and I'll be honest, I frankly didn't want to. Wrestling practices were super brutal. All you wanted to do was like go home and just pass out for the next 8 hours, and then you had homework to do. So there was no time left in the rest of my evening to lift, and the only time I could lift was early in the morning. And so instead of getting up at 6 or whatever, I got up at 4 and lifted at 4:30. And I started that in high school, and every year or so the wake up time gets a little bit earlier. Now I get up at anywhere from 2:30 to 2:45, and I have the things that I need to do first thing in the morning. So you don't need to right out the jump wake up at 2:30 or 2:45. You can, if you wake up at 7, maybe try waking up at 6. Give yourself an extra hour. An extra hour over the course of the whole year is a ton of time. And I actually did the math the other day, like how many days, if someone woke up at 7, how many extra days have I lived awake? And it was 130 days.
Damn.
Over the last 7 years. So imagine what you could do with 130 extra days like of being awake. That's incredible. Like you could build a slingshot. You could the possibilities are endless. So the first thing would be, in my opinion, waking up early. I do think that waking up early is a little bit better than staying up late, because a lot of times the majority of your peers and the people around you will stay up late. And there's too much good TV late at night. Trust me, first thing in the morning, all the TV shows suck. It's just weather in the news.
Yeah.
And so you're not really distracted by much first thing in the morning. So get up a little bit earlier. And then the second thing would be to get in some sort of physical activity every single day. And that could be anything. Mark, has the stuff that he's into. I have the stuff that I'm into. So you don't need to necessarily copy those, but you do need to push yourself physically. When you strain physically, when you find that place where fatigue is turning you into a coward, that's where you need to decide, am I going to be a coward or not? Because cowards talk about what they will never do. And so if you can get yourself exposed to that, exposed to those hard feelings of being in physical pain from training, it doesn't need to be anything crazy, but this physical discomfort, that's going to help sharpen your mind, help strengthen your mind, so that you can take that and be a little bit more disciplined in other areas. Personally, I like to do my lifting first thing in the morning, so like I start my day super disciplined, but it also just sets me up for the rest of the day. This morning I woke up and I came and lifted. There's some guys here that I lift with in the morning at SuperTraining gym. I read this morning, I ate what I was supposed to eat because I made it the night before, and now today as I'm working here in the offices at Slingshot, everything's set up and I've already crushed the first half of my day. So like, why would I want to just like screw it all over and I don't know, go like crush Krispy Kreme on the way home? But no, well, never mind.
Sounds delicious. The whole point of incorporating and adopting some of these disciplines is not to force yourself to do shit that you don't normally want to do.
Exactly.
It's not to make yourself too uncomfortable. Josh mentioned, kind of getting comfortable with things that are uncomfortable. Well, yeah, it does take a minute to kind of fit into some of these things. It does take a little while to get used to some of these things, but have your daily discipline start out as being like just so simple that it's ridiculous. Pick up your socks, start there. Just pick one thing to start, just what's the stupid annoying thing that you do that annoys your significant other? What's just, what's one thing that you can just improve slightly on? Maybe you drink a lot of soda. Let's just say, like, all right, daily discipline number 1 is let's figure out a way to switch out the sugary sodas with some diet sodas and some water, right? Like, those are things that I think we all agree that you can do. If you force yourself too much, you're going to continually feel bad about not being able to reach the goals that you're reaching, and you're going to feel like Josh did as he attached himself so strongly to wrestling. And now what happens when I lose? This is the stuff that I think about all the time, and this is the whole reason for this channel, is to be a mentorship to where I can teach you guys, like, look, man, I am a guy that got caught up in the numbers. I was chasing after those numbers, and I gained a lot, but I also lost a lot, and nearly lost like some of the things that I hold the most precious to my heart. And I don't want to see anybody else go through that. So with your disciplines, add them in slowly. Don't try to do too much at one time. Add them in slowly, and over a period of time, you'll stay connected to those daily disciplines. In the comments below, let me know. Let me and Josh know what are some disciplines that you guys have adhered to that have been transformative for you. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Josh, I think you know what to do.